Hey everyone, it's Paul Stevens here with iGo Sales and Marketing for another SuiteCRM tutorial. Today we're going to cover the SuiteCRM API version 4.1. I'm hoping to do a series of these where I cover 4.1, I cover version 8 in another one, and I cover the new GraphQL API in another tutorial. This is a little bit different. Normally I do tutorials for users, but this one's kind of more of a developer tutorial. So stick with me. So first of all, I learned all this stuff like on my own. Like I'm like a sales guy who like learned to code, is really familiar with CRMs and have used them for 25 years. So I'm going to explain it to you the way I understand it. If you are a professionally trained developer, you might understand it in a different way, but I'm going to explain it to you the way I understand it, and hopefully you will understand it as well, because I seem to be able to get by. Okay, so the first thing we're just going to cover is just a general overview of API version 4. It's still used quite a bit. A lot of people still use it. A lot of software still uses it. So that's why I'm covering it, even though the most current one is the GraphQL. But in addition to that, I'm going to cover Postman a little bit, overview of how to use Postman to test these. And then we're going to go through, we are going to get, log in by API. We're going to create a lead. We are going to retrieve a lead. We are going to update a lead. And we are going to create a file note and attach it to a lead. Okay, so that's like, there are way more things you can do, but like that's like probably 90% of the things that you're going to want to do. So without further ado, let's get into it. And just quickly, if you like my content, if this stuff is useful, please like and subscribe down below. It's really helpful for me. It gets my videos out to other people if people are liking them and subscribing to my channel, and also watching the whole video as well. I'd really appreciate it. So anyway, let's get into it. So I'm just gonna move myself out of the way here, and hopefully I don't get in the middle of what I'm trying to show you. Okay, so I'm visual, so I like to sort of understand the big picture before I get into things. So here's what's going to happen. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we need to log in. Okay, the first request we send, we have to log in, and the reason is because SuiteCRM will respond back with a session ID. Okay, and then future responses we send with not the login and password, but the session ID. Okay, so the method is like the function of what we're trying to do. Okay, and each one of these methods has kind of its own way of formatting the data to send back to SuiteCRM to get it to do what we want it to do. Okay, so once we get the login, if we want to add a record, we're going to use the method set entry, and it's going to require the session ID. So step one, we have to do this. So once we have the session ID, and it does expire after a while, so you may have to refresh it, but we can also do things like query records. Okay, and we need to use a different method, get entry list, and we'll query a module and get some records from it, and it requires the session ID. If we want to attach files to a record, like a lead, we are going to first have to query the records, because we're going to need to get the ID of a specific record that we want it attached to. We're also going to have to create a note with set entry, and then we're going to attach the files to that note with set note attachment. Okay, so that's big picture what we're trying to do. So hopefully that makes sense. That's how I kind of took me a while to get it straight in my head, but that's how it works. Okay, so what I would suggest, a couple things before I get started. Don't use your admin login to do all this stuff. Okay, you set up a user in SuiteCRM who is like, I don't know, API user or Suite API or whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. But that way you can control what that user has access to. So for example, if you're only pushing leads to SuiteCRM, then set up, API user and only give that user access to the leads module, right? If it ever gets compromised or something, you can always just like shut down that account or change the password of that account, kind of a thing, right? So if it's your admin, like, they get access to like everything. So you don't typically want to use your admin login for doing all this stuff. Okay, so a couple of things about Postman that took me forever to figure out on my own. There's all kinds of tutorials out there, but nobody ever explains how it works. Okay, I'm going to do my best. There's so much here, but hopefully I can explain enough that you'll be able to use Postman to test the request to SuiteCRM. Okay, so let's cover this panel here first of all. This is all of your requests, and just think of it like a file folder. You can create new ones. So if I wanted to create a new, like for example, this is a folder for all different categories of APIs I have. I could click here and create a new folder, and then I could click here on the folder and create a new request. So these are all requests. Okay, so the next thing to understand here is there's different types of requests, and I'm not going to go through and explain every single one of them, but you can look that up on your own. All these are going to be posts type requests, okay? And the next thing is the URL where the request goes to, okay? And depending whether you're using version 4 or version 8 or the GraphQL API, they go to different URLs. Anyway, this is the right URL. And I'll put a link down below, but I have a blog article with all of this stuff that you can just copy paste if you like, all the code, all the requests, all this stuff. I'll put a link down below. Please visit my blog. And again, I do this stuff kind of like for a living. I help people with SuiteCRM. I do sales consulting. I help them get it set up and put a system in place and automate what they do. So, if you need someone like that while you're on my site, feel free to reach out to me. Okay. So, the other thing that is kind of what we want to understand here is when you send a request, it's kind of, if you visualize it like a web page that has like a header, a body, a footer kind of thing. Well, a request doesn't have a footer, but it has a header and it has a body, okay? And the header is going to have a bunch of information that tells the other end like how to deal with what's in the body, okay? So in this case, you'll see here there's different sort of tabs here. So we go to the headers. Basically, we're telling SuiteCRM that the content type is application JSON. Okay. So that's the header. That's all we need in the header for this case. Different other APIs may have a whole laundry list of things. Okay. In the body, if you go to the SuiteCRM Developer API, they're going to say, well, you need a method, you need an input type, response type, REST data, and it's all like in a JSON format. But if you try to use just copy and paste that in and use it like as one submission in the body, as a raw submission, it won't work. I've tried a bazillion times. I can't get it to work. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but I found that the type of request that you're sending here, you'll see here, and what we want is form data, okay? And this is the form data that we're going to send, okay? And when you add a new one of these, okay, I'll just like, where am I here? No, sorry, from the folder. If I add a new request, okay, so this is the new request I just added, you'll see that all this stuff is blank, okay? So when you're starting, you're going to start with a blank one. So I've pre-populated this stuff just, for time's sake, okay? And I've tested it and make sure it works and that kind of thing so that I'm not making a video and it doesn't work. Okay, so the body is form data, okay? If I was to change this to raw, I can submit like just a pure JSON request, but for version 4, that just won't work. Okay. So what we want is form data. Okay, so basically how this works is you type in the key, which is method, and then you add the value, which is login, input type JSON, response type JSON, and then REST data. Okay, so here's another cool thing that you can do. So this one only has a few things to enter, but sometimes, like when you're doing an API, there's like 20 of these things you have to enter. You can click on bulk edit, okay, and then you can just cut and paste this stuff in here or edit it that way, okay, and it makes it easier. All right, so main settings, login, JSON, okay, and then here's what we're actually sending. So this is REST data, and this is an array that's inside the REST data, okay, if that makes sense. So we are going to send a user auth as a field, okay, and the username is API user. Yours will be, in your case, whatever your API user is. And then you need a password here that is encoded in MD5. So you can just, like if you're coding PHP, you just MD5, put it in brackets, and it codes it and outputs it for you in that format, okay? If not, there's online tools that you can encode your password into MD5, or you can set up a function in PHP to do it for you in a web page or something. I mean, there's a million ways to do it, but basically, long story short, you need an MD5 value here in order to of your password, okay? Version 1.1, it doesn't matter. Version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it doesn't matter. And then the application is Postman. It can be anything. It doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to now send this request. Okay. So we've told it what the headers is, and in the body is going to contain this stuff. Okay. And if we hit send, okay, so we got returned. This worked. Okay. If it doesn't work, you'll get like a 500 error, or you'll get some crazy gobbledygook back. But what we got back here is an array of my current user. Okay, so this is the API user. There's my user ID, but what we want here is this one. Okay, and I'm just going to copy this. All right, so this is our as I mentioned, this is the session ID that we need in order to do the next step. Okay, so I'm going to open Postman again. So we've got our session ID. So this is good for a period of time. I don't know what your server is set up as. There's a value in config PHP in SuiteCRM to say how long this lasts. But usually it's like an hour or something like that, that you can use this one before you need another one. Okay, so anyway, we've got the user. Step 1 done. Okay, so the next thing you might want to do is create a lead. Okay, so again, I just copied my session ID. Okay, now if you're like a power user of Postman, there's ways of setting up an environment and adding this as a variable, and it'll apply to everything in that environment. Anyway, I'm not that sophisticated, so we're just going to do it kind of my way. And I think it might be easier for you to understand too. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a lead. Okay, so again, I would advise you to add a new request, call it create lead. The other thing you might want to do is my get user request here is just save it, and then it updates all this stuff. Okay, so let's create a lead. Okay, so in my headers, I don't have any headers set up. I'm using form data, okay, and I have my method. What happened to? I think I overwrote it. Okay, that's okay. I think I still have it in my file here. Okay, so method is set entry. Header. I think I oversaved this, but we are going to just re-enter it, and then that way content type. Okay, some of these are already pre-populated, so content type, I'm just going to cut and paste it in from my blog. Okay, and then the body, the method is going to be set entry. Okay, so again, this is the method which we're connecting. We're going to want input type, JSON, and we're going to want response type, and JSON. Okay. And then we are going to want REST data. Oops. Okay. Now, in this case, what we want to do is we want to, I'm going to cut and paste this in from my blog. Okay. So we're going to need some things here. So a session ID, which we already have. So I'm going to go back to my get user request here. I'm going to copy my session ID. And I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to put in my session ID. So this is like the authentication that allows it to do this request. Then we need a module name, which in this case is leads. And then we need a name value list. Okay, so the name, first name is going to be value John, name, last name, value Doe, so on and so forth. So one key thing here is if you don't put these square brackets at the beginning and the end of the name value list, it won't work. Okay, I struggled, I don't know how many hours the first time I did that because I didn't have those two. Okay, so that's a key thing here. And this is, I guess in coding terms, it's like, this is an array, and this is like an array of objects inside the array, I guess is how you talk about that. But basically, in order to make that happen, you have to have the square brackets. Okay, so this request should be good. So we've got form data. This is our body. We've got all this filled in. Let's send this. Fingers crossed. Oh, I got a 500 error. How come? Okay, so I just realized that I had misspelled JSON here, giving us the 500 error. So I fixed that. That's how tricky this can be. That's why you need to test stuff in Postman. Okay, so when you should get back a response here that shows you the ID of the lead that was just created, first name, last name, and the stuff that we sent. Okay, now I can go show you this in SuiteCRM, but the fact that we got this back, I know it worked. Okay, so that's adding a lead. Okay, I'm going to put you on pause here and just log into SuiteCRM and show you the lead. Okay, so you can see here John Doe is the one I just created, and you can see it's populated with everything that I sent over. Okay, so you can obviously, in the REST data, like I just populated first name, last name, email, phone. Okay, but you can populate any SuiteCRM field you want. Just make sure it's included in the name value list here, and you can populate it whatever you want. Okay, so that's creating a lead. So let's move on to retrieving a lead. Okay, here we go, get lead. That's a different one. All right, so same thing here. We're going to set up our headers. Our body is method get entry list, response type JSON, input type JSON, and then the REST data. Okay, again, we're going to need the session ID, so I'm going to have to go get that from here. And change that to the new session ID. Okay, and then the module name is leads. The query is going to be leads first name equals John and leads last name equals Doe. I mean, you could look it up by phone number or whatever you like, but that's the query I'm doing. And then order by, I haven't specified anything, but you could say order by last name or something if you wanted to. Okay. offset is required. Select fields. So this is what the sort of the fields it's going to return. Okay, so I want to return the ID, first name, last name, email, and phone work. Okay, link names to field array. I'm not going to specify anything there. Max results deleted 0. Okay, because you don't want to return deleted records. The way SuiteCRM stores records in the databases, when you delete them, it doesn't actually delete it. It just marks it as deleted equals 1. Okay, and then it doesn't show it on the front end. So, and then there's a process that like every month or so it cleans them all up. Okay, so you don't want to query any time and get deleted equals 1 because it's not a real record, right? It's deleted. Okay, so let's send this one and hope it works. Okay, and it does. So you can see here we got one result, and we got the entry list, which is the item here. So there's the ID of the leads. The name value list contains all the field data that we asked for. Okay, and then I didn't ask for any relationships, but I would have got that as well. Okay, so that's how we can query a lead. And again, all this, like, this is all in my blog article if you want to go visit it and get all this stuff. The other thing here, just important, it's a post. I've done it so many times where I didn't change this to post and I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. Okay, so we're posting that one. Okay, so that's pretty much retrieving a lead. You can see once you've done the first one or two, it gets easier, okay, because you sort of understand it better. So let's update this lead. Okay, so there's the lead ID. Okay, so here's update the lead. All right, so what am I going to update here? Okay, so we're going to update the phone number to a different phone number. Okay, is what I did in my example. So again, it's the same thing, same URL. We're going to post. The form data method is set entry to update, input type JSON, response type JSON, and the rest data is this. And we're going to need two things here. We're going to need the session ID, and we're going to need the ID of the lead that we want to update, right? So I'm going to go back to my user here, query, and I'm going to copy that. Okay, and again, you can set things as variables and reuse them. That's too advanced for me. I'm just doing a basic query here. But if you're a power user, I'm sure you would maybe see what I'm doing and know a better way to do it. Okay, so we need, in order to update the lead, we are going to need the session ID. Okay, so I'm just going to cut and paste the session ID that we retrieved. Okay, and then the lead ID we're going to need here. So this is the lead ID query that we just got. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste the lead ID here. Copy. And I'm going to put that here. Okay. And again, this might be easier with variables, but I think by me copying and pasting it, it sort of shows you what's going on here better. All right, so this should work now. It's going to log in with the session ID, and it's going to module leads and the name value list. It's going to update this record and make the phone work equal to this number. Okay, so I'm going to send that, fingers crossed. Okay, and it did. You can see that it updated the lead because we got a response back. Okay, so if I open SuiteCRM, let's see here, where can I find it? It's in one of my tabs. Here we go. Okay, so that was the old phone number. I'm gonna refresh that, and you'll see there's the new phone number. Okay, so it updated the lead. All right, so that's updating a lead. The last thing we're going to want to do is create a note, do a note attachment, and make that work. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is create the note. Okay, so I'm not going to go through and explain it in as much detail because we already created a lead, and creating a note is exactly the same thing. Okay, so here's the request to create a note. The only thing I'm going to need here is a couple things. So I'm going to attach this note. First of all, my session ID. So I'm going to attach this note to the lead that I just created, right? So I want the parent ID of this note to be that lead. So I need the lead ID. Okay, so let's go back to my lead here. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go to my create note, and I'm going to set the parent ID to be equal to that lead. The next thing is the parent type. So SuiteCRM knows what exactly that ID is related to is leads. Okay, and then the name of this record we're going to create is just going to be called lead attachment. I think I'll just put the number 2 there just so it creates a new one with a different name, so I don't get confused when I show it to you later. Okay. So if I send this, we are going to create a note. Okay, boom, there we go, created a note. Okay, so now for the next step, we are going to need the note ID. Okay, because we are going to want to add a file to this note. Okay, so I've got this already prepared here. Okay, so same thing. The big difference here is the method is set note attachment. Okay, input type JSON, response type JSON, everything else is the same. And let's have a look at our REST data. Okay, so I'm going to have to put the session ID in as well. Okay. Add file. Okay, yeah, we don't need the lead ID. We just need the note ID. Okay, so the note ID is here. Okay, because we already established that the note is related to the lead, right? So there's the note ID that we just got returned, and the only other thing I need is the session ID, which I'm going to get from my previous request. Okay. All right. So what I have attached here is a PDF. Okay, so in order to submit it, you need to take your PDF and convert it to base 64. Okay. And you get all this gobbledygook. So if you have a big PDF or whatever the file attachment you're doing, this just happens to be a PDF, but you could do a JPEG, doesn't matter. But the thing is, you have to convert that file to the base 64 output, and you get this, big long gobbledygook here. It's fine, doesn't matter how long it is. I mean, obviously there's a file limit to how big you can upload to your server, but this could be quite long. I just picked a short one. It's just a PDF that basically says, I don't know, I think this is a PDF or something. So I wanted to keep it on the screen. And then the next thing we need is the file name, and we're just going to call it attachment, and I'll call it attachment 1 since I already created one before. Okay, so let's send this, fingers crossed. Okay, and you can see we created it. All right, so what does this look like in SuiteCRM? So let's go back, have a look. Okay, so here's our lead. I'm just going to refresh this again. Okay, and if we're lucky, we should go down here and we should see. I did, sorry. Attach it to the wrong ID. But anyway, you can see here that it did attach it, in fact. So there's the lead attachment 2 that we just created today. And if I open it, you'll see I have the node attachment, and there's my file. If I open the file, whoops, you'll see there's my PDF. Okay, and it's just a blank page that's generated. I thought I might have put some text in it, but it's just a blank page. So anyway, that is how you do all this stuff. There's, I'm gonna pull over my blog here, but there are, a whole pile of different methods. Like, for example, if you wanted to get a note instead of set a note, there's stuff here to work with documents and relationships. I've showed you some of the common ones here, but there's lots more. So you can explore those on your own. Maybe if you want me to do another video on some of these other methods, leave a comment below or reach out to me on my blog. I'd really appreciate it. Again, Hope you found this useful. If you did, please like and subscribe. It's super helpful. If you would like someone like me to help you with your SuiteCRM implementation, by all means, reach out to me. Thank you very much.